despite our identities, despite our differences, there are some things that we very deeply share on a very core level, and it's, our feelings around music and what it does for us. Music doesn't define you, actually, is something that I've learned. I think it takes years to be a good DJ. I really think it takes like at least 10 years.
You've been doing this for more than 20 years.
Yeah, I've been doing it for like 21 years or something. Occasion, if I have a weekend off, I may actually still go to a club. It's a big part of making sense of the world for me, like dance floors and what happens on dance floors and the conversations that you have without ever using words. But for me, as much as drugs saved my life from the age of 14 onwards, they also halted my growth. I think it's really important to get behind the trans community. And, that's what ignorance can do. It withholds really important information from people who need it most.
Thanks so much for joining me, Cormac.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Chloe.
Yes. Queer history is clearly such a vibrant through line in your work, from the music that you play to the conversations you have on your own podcast, Queerly Beloved. So I'm really excited to talk about that. And so my first question to you is, why do queer narratives intersect so tightly with the history of the club? And how has queer life played a significant role in shaping music and nightlife?
Yeah, I think it's inescapable to separate the two. It's common knowledge that house music comes from predominantly queer, Black and Latin men. But before that also, from blues music, we have Ma Rainey or Lil Richard, or even Tchaikovsky is rumored to be queer. So I think like the connection between LGBTQ plus community and music is ever present. We live in a time now where clubbing is not a secret anymore, and club culture is so widespread. It's such a big business and such a big industry, and it's kind of great to see that acknowledgement of its roots. And it was also interesting to see the resistance against that narrative. Some people really resist this narrative that it comes from queer culture. And I always think, yes, it's evolved and it includes everyone now. And why the resistance? Why would that be a problem? And it's throughout all music. Genesis P-Orridge with Throbbing Gristle, they have a unique transition story. And obviously the Riot Girl movement of the 90s, that's very political and very feminist and very queer positive. Clubs are somewhat of a community space. They're somewhere where, at least for myself, I was able to, go into a club. I grew up in Northern Ireland, which was very stifled because of the Troubles. And one offset of that was that, when you have such tension and a war, culture really suffers. There's less culture available. And so when I started to go clubbing, that was the first time I saw two men hug, and I suddenly realized, especially when I saw people dancing, because I loved to dance and I still love to dance, and I had kind of pushed that down because it was another thing that outed myself or brought some negative homophobic response to be a good dancer where I grew up. So when I saw men dancing and men hugging, and for the first time other gay men and other queer people, that became a community space for me. I understood it immediately. I took my time to learn the etiquette of clubbing. I think that's important. And I think that for many queer people, it becomes a community space. In the late 80s and 90s, clubs were also where you would go to learn about the latest HIV treatments, or you would get information about your community. So it's very much been, the word gets used a lot now, a safe space, but a community space also to learn about your culture. I mean, I didn't meet other gay people until I went clubbing. So for me, it was like being a kid in a candy shop, and also quite scary as well, because it wasn't exactly as I imagined it. And I was also coming to terms with that stuff myself. And I think that's constantly evolving, the role of clubs for queer people and clubbing. And you see it now. I mean, you also see a lot of conversation around queer-only spaces or queer safe spaces, and it's an ever-evolving conversation. It's an evolution, and it maintains to this day that clubs have that importance within queer culture. Actually, I played recently at a club, and you could say that all of that element had been drawn out of it. It was like the VIP area was too big, and the production was too big, and you didn't see any minorities really. And a club experience without any of that, I have very little connection to it. I mean, the music, I can connect to the music, but it's not an enjoyable experience. I think it being a safe space for so many people is also what makes it incredibly special and magical.
Definitely. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, I mean, you're so committed to, in a way, I see the Queerly Beloved podcast as a project in archiving queer oral history and like really getting different perspectives from the queer community, not just, the gay community. Like you're really capturing like many different facets of the queer experience in nightlife. And it seems like it's become like a really important part of your identity in the last couple of years. Maybe can you talk a little bit about the podcast and maybe if there were any, I don't know, primary goals that you had in mind when you decided to start it?
It's a bit like making music. It kind of, you might have an idea, or you might have you have an idea, and then it kind of becomes itself in a way. It becomes, I like having those conversations. That's the first thing to mention. And those are the kind of conversations I would have probably at like 7 a.m. at an after, maybe not at 7 a.m. I think 7 a.m. is kind of when you want to get silly, but maybe at like 4 a.m. in the kitchen at an after party. Those are the conversations that I would end up having. And anything around music, I'm interested to speak about it. When I had the idea to do it, I guess it was mostly, there's a lot of division in community anyways, in all communities. I mean, social media thrives on division, and we're all paying attention to social media. Some people are getting their education, their social education via social media. And when I see the rise in anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, or the rise in more conservative religious ideology, I think it's more important than ever that the LGBTQ plus community, that we're able to unite more. And that lacks a bit. There's maybe not enough of that. It's important that we're able to be mature enough to say, okay, we don't agree on everything, but we're united in this. Because when right-wing ideology is coming for us, it's coming for us. It's not coming for some of us, maybe some of us first, but it's, it's removing our rights. And if we aren't united on that, then we're in a pretty weak position. I wanted to tap into that, and I realized that we also live in very individualist times. My story, my Instagram, my fitness journey, all of that. And some of that's really important, I think, especially for people that haven't had a voice, people that haven't been acknowledged by society. And I realized that as much as there are new identities, there are no new feelings. That's something that we can all connect on. And my connection to feeling is very strongly connected to music. So I figured in talking about music, when you talk to people about music, it gets very passionate, and it's kind of almost ethereal, or you can't really hold it. You're talking in terms of feelings, and It's a passionate topic, and I realized that despite our identities, despite our differences, there are some things that we very deeply share on a very core level, and it's, our feelings around music and what it does for us.
Oh, you articulated that so well. You touched on this a little bit, but it seems like one of your goals in creating this series has been to contribute positive dynamic images of queerness to the media landscape. What were some of the tropes of how queer people were depicted in the media when you were growing up?
It's important, firstly, that queer people are better represented everywhere, not just in music. Music's my focus and my passion, but, to see more sports people, to see more scientists, to see, not just in the creative industries. It's important to see the contribution that queer people are making and can make to society. When I was growing up, it was mostly the gay man that was featured, and that was usually something ridiculous, something funny, something very non-threatening. And it says a lot about culture, that to be a feminine man, it's almost like an act of treason. It's wild. It's a form of misogyny. If you show me a homophobe, I'll show you a misogynist. It's really that interconnected. And then also, I grew up kind of I was very young during the education on TV about the AIDS crisis, but I remember it. I remember this kind of very scary advert on TV, which was gravestones, and it was about protecting yourself from AIDS. So combined with this idea that gay people were ridiculous, it was also this idea that they should be feared and that it was wrong. And also in my school, it was the kind of tail end of Clause 28, which was a law brought in by Maggie Thatcher so that it banned teachers from talking about anything queer in schools. So there was no support system. It was a very silent topic. Gay people were meant to be feared or ridiculed. And I think that's changed a lot. I just watched What It Feels Like for a Girl on the BBC.
I don't know that.
It's so wonderful. I mean, I just loved it. I binge watched it, and I will probably soon watch it again, which I don't do with very many series. It's the story of Paris Lees, who is an author and a trans woman, and it's her story of growing up in the north of England and the challenges she faces as a working class kid growing up in those circumstances. And it's geniusly funny. It's also really heartbreaking, but to have that on TV is so amazing. To have RuPaul's Drag Race on TV is amazing. Like, to have that for queer kids or kids who don't fit, this kind of binary, and also to challenge this fear of the feminine. I think that's great to have in someone's living room, like growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing, as I said, that I really appreciate about your podcast is you are not just talking about gay culture. You unpack different facets of queerness, including female sexuality. And I was listening to one episode, and you said that you always felt more at home in outsider queer spaces, like club nights for trans femme or non-binary communities, rather than just like gay parties. Why is that?
I grew up in a homophobic environment. My family wasn't more homophobic than the neighbors, but it was homophobic, And as a survival method, I guess I had internalized a lot of that as well, which is not uncommon. It's not uncommon, I think, if you grow up in such an environment, to also have a sense of homophobia within yourself. All children, regardless of the story, you kind of want to please your parents. So if you sense that there's this thing that is not really appropriate, like, the TV shows you're watching, the music you want to listen to, spinning around your living room, playing with girls, like these things, as you grow as a kid, as I grew as a kid, brought me kind of negative attention. So by the time I came out and came onto the gay scene, I think I just didn't know myself very well, and I was very afraid of the femininity within me. And when I went to all male spaces, it was really, it didn't feel very friendly, and I didn't really kind of feel like I fitted in there. It wasn't what I expected it to be. And the trans community and the trans club, I used to go to this club called Stunners, which some people watching or listening may remember. And it was a very small club. It was almost like a bar with a dance floor in a back room. And a friend of mine and we kind of discovered it by mistake, and we were there every week because I automatically felt comfortable with trans women especially. And yeah, I also I owe the start of my career really to a trans person. I learned to DJ, I learned to mix vinyl from a friend, Alex Silverfish, who sadly is no longer with us, but she was also the person I went to when I started to mix vinyl, because I would go around to I would say to someone, "Oh, I want to learn how to mix. Can I come around and mix on your decks?" And the guys would be like, yeah, sure, come over. And then it just became this kind of like dick swinging competition of showing off. Whereas I could go around to my friend Alex's house and she was just making cups of tea for her girlfriends, and I was mixing really badly in the corner and nobody cared. But I felt very comfortable there. I didn't feel judged, and I felt at home. And we didn't really have a word for non-binary, but so many of my friends were, I guess, non-binary, and at the time we were calling it more kind of genderqueer, and there weren't great examples of that around. So some of my friends who were going through that really struggled with it, and it's great to see more representation of non-binary gender and sexuality out there. It's great to see it.
Yeah. You also make the observation, I think, in the same interview. I'm aware of the aesthetic pressures on gay men. I mean, I'm not obviously part of that community, but you noted that a lot of it is a response to the AIDS epidemic. If I'm not mistaken, that it's this pressure almost to look really fit and healthy, and but then it becomes very suffocating. Like there's this physical ideal that men are supposed to live up to and like look very manly.
Yeah. I mean, that initially, from what I have learned, was really a very 90s response, the post-AIDS thing of looking hyper fit. And there's nothing wrong with looking after yourself and looking hyper fit, but as long as you're not kind of viewing everybody through that lens, for anyone, it's not good to measure someone by how they look alone. It doesn't do anybody any favors, and it can make for a very unfriendly club. But I must say that I do notice a great wave of feminine boys, feminine masculine coming through the club, and I love to see it. I just love to see it, and I think it's mostly going in the right direction.
If you had to compile a list of lessons or valuable takeaways from your interviews hosting Queerly Beloved, what would they be?
Well, the first one, as I said, is that there are no new feelings, just new words. And we have more in common with each other than we do in difference. And I think most people, when you really have a one-on-one with them, they are more open to differing points of view than you might imagine. I think social media, for example, does a great disservice to us, because a lot of the arguments that happen on there, I think if they were in person, it just wouldn't be an argument, it would be a conversation. And music doesn't define you, actually, is something that I've learned, because music is a vehicle for a feeling in many ways. And there are people having their queer awakening with Avril Lavigne, and there are people having their queer awakening with S Club 7, or some kind of unexpected things, maybe, or at least a bit not unexpected, but maybe not like the coolest things, but their passion and their and what that music gives to someone is equally as valid as if it's a very cool thing. Yeah, and it's interesting to see like your starting point with music and where it can end up, and it all kind of makes sense in retrospect. I think the music that you listened to growing up and that you were exposed to by your family, that's another question or another point, because one of the questions that we touch on, the first question really, is about the music you listened to growing up, and it's really amazing to see the trajectory sometimes of that early influence on how people develop musically. That's really beautiful.
So what were your early influences?
Well, I was very lucky because I grew up in a house with two older brothers, and one was 10 years older and the other was 12 years older, and a sister who was also older. And our house, my brothers and sisters were really quite music crazy. Like, they were really obsessed with music, and my eldest brother was listening to a lot of more synthetic sounding 80s stuff, like obviously Depeche Mode and New Order, but also the Cocteau Twins and the Psychedelic Furs and Public Image Limited. And then my other brother was a bit more kind of over in the guitar world, so there was a lot of Queen and Bowie, but also Prince, interestingly, and then a lot of really classic stuff like the Eagles or Bob Dylan, things like that. So I feel like I grew up with quite a good education in that way, but my parents were very much into Irish traditional music, which at the time I had no time for, like zero time for. But actually I've come to appreciate it and really embrace it as part of my culture. I don't listen to a lot of it, but I see the beauty in it now. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your career as a DJ. I'm curious, I was reading the text for your RA podcast, and you are a self-described late bloomer. What exactly does that mean?
Good question. I mean, a late bloomer, I think, in terms of really, maybe it's not a late bloomer. I think it takes years to be a good DJ. I really think it takes like at least 10 years.
You've been doing this for more than 20 years now.
Yeah, I've been doing it for like 21 years or something. And I think it's taken me at least half of that to really know my lane. Because when you have a lot of musical influence and when you start to DJ, it's really a process of discovery. You know, you're drawn to music and someone plays an incredible set and you're like, what's that track? And then you play it and it doesn't really work. And there's an education in that about, like, there's so much music I love that I don't play. I also do love every record I play. I made a promise to myself for that. But I think it's taken me that long to really realize, oh, this is what I do. This for the essence of me, it sounds a bit pretentious, but this is the music that captures that, and it's authentic because people feel it if it's authentic. You know, people talk about like one DJ being better than the other. For me, it's more, I can enjoy any DJ set when the sound is authentic to the person playing, because I feel that. I feel it, like, you know, whether it's, you know, 145 techno or, you know, 108 kind of really kind of chuggy disco or pop or whatever. I can feel that when that DJ is in their lane and with their authenticity, that's a good set. So maybe when I said late bloomer, that's what I meant. I think it's taken me a long time to really love my choices. And some of that was rooted in homophobia, for sure. And realize that nobody can do it the way I do it. In the same way, nobody can do it the way you do it. And nobody can do it the way the next DJ does it. Like, everybody has a unique fingerprint to put on it. And I realized that no one can do it the way I do it. And nobody can do it the way you do it. And nobody can do it the way the next DJ does it. We all have a unique stamp or fingerprint to put on our set. And when I realized that, I kind of made the decision. I mean, I want to have that conversation with the audience, but at the same time, my focus changed, because I was like, I'm going to enjoy this set. I love this record. And when that happened, everything changed for me.
So we have I don't know if she's a mutual friend or like a mutual acquaintance, but you're on the same booking agency. And I was talking to her about, I was like not lamenting, maybe stressing out about the state of my career and just worrying. And she was like, you know who you should talk to is Cormac. And she was just saying that you have, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you've navigated so many uncertainties and anxieties and ups and downs. And I was wondering maybe if you could just reflect on that a little bit, you know, just having been a creative for 20 years.
Right. And that's an intersection regardless of anything else, because, you know, being a creative in this capitalistic world is not for the faint-hearted. Yes. It's just not. And I would say that DJing as a career, it took me years to say that because I just loved it so much it didn't feel like a career. But DJing as my life career, it's a marathon. You know, there's ups and downs. There's times when you've been busy, times when you've been less busy, times when you're really feeling it, times when you're not. I'm really lucky and blessed now that in the last years I've kind of got to a place that I always dreamed of, and having had less busy times, I'm so appreciative of that. And it's very easy to get caught up in like, oh, this year's less busy or more busy or whatever. I think it's such a privilege to have something creative that you do and to make a living from it. I always come back to that. And I think when you get distracted by those fears, it's good to reconnect to, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing. And sometimes you don't have the answer to that, but initially it's not for the money. And it takes time to build those things up. At least for me, it did. Nothing happened overnight. I really had to graft a lot. Like when I started mixing, I was mixing vinyl, and I don't think I was very good. And yeah, I kind of stuck at it because I was determined and I have a passion for music. And it wasn't everybody that would stick with becoming a DJ. Lots of people would say, oh, I'm going to be a DJ. And then actually the graft of it, especially when it was vinyl, was actually a bit of a pain in the ass. Mm. In answer to your question, I think it's good to pause and ask yourself, what is my reason for doing this? Why do I want to do it?
Yes. You said in an interview, I guess I listened to many, you said that what you do is a job of love. And when you finally love yourself, so much magic can happen. And I thought that was a really beautiful sentiment. And I guess that's maybe a segue into what I want to talk about next, if you're comfortable with it, which is you've been quite open about mental health and like your own ups and downs with mental health. You're speaking with Fat Tony. Yes. This is a great interview. And you said that you often wake up with Tragic FM playing in your head and you want to change the station.
Yes.
What is it? I'm saying this as someone who can relate. What is it that you wake up worrying about in the mornings?
Right. Well, how long have you got? Yeah, I mean, that journey for me has been quite long. I've had depression since my teens, and I was managing that for a long time with street drugs. I don't recommend that. As much fun as you can have with drugs, don't manage your mental health with it. You know, and when I finally decided to get sober, what I was left with was a very intense depression, which manifests itself. It can be negative thinking. It can be very fearful thinking. I mean, it's things that everyone can relate to, but it can become very magnified and problematic in that it can just overwhelm my system. Like depression can be very physical for me. Like if I'm in a depressive episode, I bump into things and I forget things, and it becomes very physical. I mean, it is an illness. And I guess that Tragic FM, it's less than it used to be, thankfully. And I think that's really through the grace of having good mental health care. finally. And also through my sobriety and the work I do within the 12-step program that I'm in, I think that has really unpicked a lot of my trauma, if you like, or my difficulties. And that Tragic FM, like, it's there, but I'm thankfully in a position with my mental health today where I can actually choose to not go that direction. When my depression was untreated, I didn't have the choice, it was, it just swamped me completely. But now, yeah, the Tragic FM is there, and I do quite a lot of work on it in the mornings as part of my recovery program. I wake up and I meditate and I do things to kind of get my head on straight, and it's a lot better than it used to be.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you.
And, what was really touching about this interview with Fat Tony, who's also a DJ, is it's kind of revealed later in the interview that I guess he was or is your AA sponsor.
He was in my very early days of recovery. Yeah, he was my sponsor for a period of time, yeah.
Oh, well.
He drove me absolutely nuts, and he kind of saved my life, so both.
One thing I wonder, I haven't actually had, I've had some sober people come on, but it's, I think, people who haven't necessarily struggled with it. It's just been a part of their life because they haven't been open to talking about sobriety. And was it difficult for you to make that transition into sobriety?
Oh, for sure. I mean, most people, I would say, when they get sober, don't go to clubs, or it takes them a long time to do that. But clubs are my community. They're my life. I'm in clubs working a lot. But when I'm not working, on a rare occasion, if I have a weekend off, I may actually still go to a club. It's a big part of making sense of the world for me, like dance floors and what happens on dance floors and the conversations that you have without ever using words. It's a big part of who I am. So I had quite a lot of resistance when I first got sober, but one thing I was really sure about was, like, my sobriety had to be better than my using. It just had to be. It had to, otherwise I wasn't going to do it. And my using in the last years was not fun. I mean, there were moments of fun, and I had so much fun partying, and I'm certainly not anti-exploration or anti-drugs or anything. Everyone has their unique story and unique relationship with those things, and I'm actually quite kind of grateful that I discovered that outlet early on, because I think it probably saved me in many ways. It gave me like a vision of the future and a lifeline when I didn't really have one. But getting sober in clubs is tough. Thankfully, I had good support. I could phone my sponsor, Tony, at the time, or, I was able to meet other people who were also sober, and I had to change a lot of things. I was no longer the first person at the party and the last person to leave. And I really had to take it very slow. Actually, I had a residency at Fabric at the time, and the boys there that I was doing the club with were very supportive, and I was able to set boundaries, like when I was working, of what was okay around me and what was not, and they were very supportive of it, so I'm really grateful to those two. And I guess it is possible. It's not easy. The miracle of it really now is that I'm in clubs and everyone's doing everything, and I just don't want to do it. It's really bizarre. It's really fascinating. It did feel like kind of not willpower, but it was such a conflict at the start, and now I don't see anybody doing anything that I didn't do, or no one's having more fun than I think I had. So
that's amazing. I think it was in the same interview, you said, I thought when I got sober, it would be the end of everything, the end of my sex life, the end of my love life, the end of my DJ career. And it was the start of all of them. Yeah.
It really was. I mean, everything in my life got better when I got sober. And as I said before, I don't think sobriety is for everyone. I'm not a spokesperson for that in any way. I think you have to find your own lane and explore those things. And as long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting someone else, it's arguably not a problem. But for me, as much as drugs saved my life from the age of 14 onwards, they also halted my growth. So I had like a lot of growing up to do, and I was able to do that through sobriety and through help and through a 12-step program. You know, it was a very kind of held way to grow up and develop into emotional sobriety and emotional maturity, I guess.
One reason I wanted to bring this up is, and you have said this, that members of the LGBTQI spectrum are at least 3 times as likely to suffer from depression and in turn drug and alcohol abuse. And I feel like that's not something that's openly spoken about very much. What can we do to collectively help support people who are in these places?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think everyone that's using drugs is depressed. I think like people use drugs for many reasons, and for many people it's just not a problem.
Right.
The mental health stuff, I mean, that's a very good conversation and a big conversation. I mean, I would say there's good evidence to show that internalized homophobia or the feeling of shame, you know, if you live in a society where you don't have great examples of what it is to be LGBTQ or queer, and especially in times where a more right-wing narrative is on the rise, you can internalize shame. You know, I think Carl Jung said the difference between guilt and shame. You know, guilt is kind of reasonable. It allows you to check in with yourself, and have you overstepped your sense of morality for yourself. Like sometimes guilt can be a good thing because it kind of puts you back on course, but shame is really this belief that you in and of yourself are wrong. And that's a really horrific gift to impart on any child, and it's not exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community, but there are repercussions to that. And at least for me, I had no real sense of my center. So when I started to explore with drugs, I had relief from the pain of not being in touch with myself. And I think imparting good self-esteem, good self-love, good boundaries on kids, I'm not a parent, but I think those are kind of 3 invaluable gifts to give any child, you know, because then I think if you can impart good self-esteem and good boundaries and a good sense of their value, you maybe don't have to teach them so much about the world. You don't have to, yes, you can be open and talk about the dangers of things, but I think if someone comes into the world with pretty good self-love and self-respect and boundaries, and they know their inherent worth, they're less likely to want to injure it or destroy it, perhaps.
Okay, well, I want to turn to things that you're doing right now. You started your record label, Polari, and it's a name with a wonderful reference to queer history that I was not aware of. Can you explain what it means?
Well, Polari was a language or a jargon that was used, I think, from like 1930 up until 1970, but there's traces of it in the 18th century as well. And it was, for the most part, a secret language used by LGBTQ plus people to communicate in safety. It wasn't, you know, you couldn't like chat with your gay buddy about, oh, wow, that guy's hot, or are you going to this illegal bar later, or do you think that person is gay? Like, you couldn't have those conversations because homosexuality was so illegal. So it was a survivalist, very camp language that was spoken predominantly by queer people, but also by sailors and circus people, and like kind of the idea was kind of people that didn't fit society often spoke Polari. And we still have Polari words today. You know, we have drag and like putting on your slap for makeup, and dyke, and like you know, there's various words that come from Polari. I mean, I chose it as a name for the label. I'm not living in the past, but I'm also very respectful of our history. I try to be quite, try to learn things about it. And there's always this chance of kind of erasure of our history. And I wanted to take the Polari thing, because I think, like, even this conversation, I think it's an interesting thing to know about. And there's some great documentaries on YouTube where you can watch someone speaking Polari, and it's really funny, and it's really quite amazing to see. So I chose it for that reason. And then I also chose it because, you know, language, music, they're both kind of conductors for feeling, aren't they? You express how you feel through it. So it also kind of made sense in my head a bit. So yeah.
Yeah. I know that the album artwork also plays a really important role in your releases. The covers are made by queer artists, and they also feature queer figures. Like one was of Freddie Mercury, and then Rob Halford, who's the lead singer of the metal band Judas Priest. I was not aware that he was queer.
Yeah.
What else do you have planned for the label?
Those particular covers are like a little edit series that I do, which are free to download, and I do that with the suggestion that people make a donation to All Out, which is a leading organisation which hopes to improve and uphold the lives of queer people throughout the globe, and they do amazing work. And I kind of wanted to speak a little bit about, on each release, I wanted to talk a little bit about the featured artist on the cover, because it usually doesn't match the track in many ways. There's always like a bit of a juxtaposition, which I like. And also like this Rob Halford thing. I mean, it's great to learn about queer people involved in music that you didn't think about, who might be queer.
Like the metal scene, which I imagine is
Totally.
so like cis, macho.
Totally. Yeah, what's coming up in the label? I actually have my first release in some years. That's coming out on the 25th of July. It's a track I worked on with Chinaski, who's a good friend of mine. I really love to collaborate when I make music, and we've been working on it for quite some time. You and Pearson mixed it, and there's like an extended kind of dub of it, and there's also a Fred Terror mix on the EP. So the music I've been making lately, I guess it's an homage, a pastiche in many ways of 80s high energy. It's kind of like poppers music, like 80s high energy. It's a nod to that time. It's to the flamboyance of that time, to the characters of that time. I mean, who knows, maybe the next thing I make is completely different, but the last few releases have very much been in that kind of lane of it's a historical reference, but it's in the now. It's quite poppy. It's very poppy what I made.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Yeah.
We are approaching the height of Pride Month. Wait, are we going to be playing at CST? Am I?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you have coming up, and what are you most looking forward to? And I'm specifically thinking that you're going to be playing CSD weekend.
Yes. I'm very lucky that I do that date most years. I'm playing that date in Panorama Bar, which is always it's always a great experience and a great privilege, I think, playing there, especially on that date. You know, it's such an embracing, free, expressive, celebratory experience, and we need as much of those experiences as we can get. I'm also playing at Paris Pride, and I actually didn't look at my calendar before coming to the interview, but I'm doing a lot of prides, and I'm around. I think all my dates are kind of up on the old socials. Yeah.
So people know where to look.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about seems like you've played in some places around the world where queer parties are really revolutionary and even dangerous. I'm thinking specifically about the Eau de Cologne party, which I think is happening at Bastiani, right?
It's incredible. It's so incredible there, and I love those crew. I feel really privileged to meet them. You know, you meet people on the road all the time, and you meet people in clubs all the time, and then you meet some people that we just have a really special connection with. What they're doing is so important, And I do feel sometimes here, like we're in Berlin today, or anywhere really, also in Europe or in the UK, I mean, we have it so good in terms of freedom. I mean, yes, we can focus on the things we don't have, and there's always progress to be made, but we have such freedom and support as well, and yet we often still find time to complain. Whereas with Eau de Cologne at Bassiani, you know, it's not illegal to be queer there, but it may as well be. The government are reducing funding to anything queer or any organizations that are helping queer youth. You know, when I first played there, I was wearing a AIDS awareness t-shirt, and this guy came to me and spoke to me and told me he was HIV positive. And we had a conversation about it. And when he first learned that he was HIV positive, he thought he was possessed. And, you know, that's what ignorance can do. It withholds really important information from people who need it most. And Eau de Cologne, it is by default a political party. There's no getting away from it, you know. Being queer there is a fucking radical act. And they do it so well. And they don't really make profit from it either. They really do it for the passion. And it's been amazing to see since they moved to Bassiani, they have kind of encouraged a more expressive dress code, if you like. And from the first time I played there to the last time I played there, it's really great to see people's confidence grow. It's beautiful to see, and it really warms my heart to be there. I mean, I love Tbilisi anyway, but I have a real passion for that party. Also, when I played in China, of all places, that also felt very similar. You know, it's not illegal, but it may as well be. And doing anything out of the ordinary there, I mean, that feels really kind of out there and risky. But it makes the party's amazing. The parties are amazing there. Yeah, really much.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that there's so much energy and so much appreciation that you're there because these parties must be quite rare.
Yeah, and it's a two-way street because I really appreciate it. It gives me energy and life, and I get so much from the dance floor as well. And, you know, I love playing festivals and bigger events, but it's really important for me to also stay connected to where I come from. Also, I think it's good as a DJ technically, because when you play at festivals, I think if you do that a lot, which I do fortunately, but your set can change a bit. I think you have a more condensed experience. Like a festival can be a bit like, you know, giving someone a Polaroid of what you do, whereas in a club space or in a smaller space, I think at least I can play more experimental, and I can also be a bit more ironic and fun and play something really poppy, which sometimes if you do that at a festival, I do that at festivals, and thankfully more often than not it works, but it does feel like a bigger risk sometimes in a more mainstream environment.
Yeah, I wonder, do you think mainstream equates like heteronormativity?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, festivals, you know, they thrive on business and ticket sales, and that involves a lot of promotion to everyone, and then that can sometimes lead to a more mainstream crowd, I guess. But then you also have something amazing like Whole Festival, you know, which is like credit to them. You know, they don't have sponsorship, which is incredible. And I think what they do is pretty amazing, actually. You know, it's really, and it's quite funny because they just keep kind of improving on it.
It's absolutely exploded.
It's really exploding, and they've really tried to challenge the male dominance of things as well, because men take up more space in the world and also take up more space within the queer movement. And I think Whole Festival do a really good effort and a good job at addressing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that, you know, we just reflected on, we're in this place in history where on the one hand, I feel like a younger generation is embracing queerness and fluidity. in a way that wasn't even a conversation when I was young. But on the other hand, we have this enormous tide of right-wing conservatism, like threatening gender justice and queerness around the world. Where do you hope to see the queer community in the coming years? Like, what do you think that the greatest challenges are going to be?
Yeah.
And perhaps, if I can add one more question, how would we overcome them together?
Maybe we can start with the thing that's most prominent right now. I think it's really important to get behind the trans community. You know, if you're a gay man, for example, and you're not joining that fight, you do not know our history. It's really important that trans people have our support right now. They are being subjected to the same discrimination, the same narrative that gay men were subjected to in the 80s. You know, this idea of they're coming for your kids are being indoctrinated, keep it out of schools, it's sexual perversion. Those are the same tropes that have been thrown at us for decades. And unlike gay men, trans people make up such a small part of the population, and they've been politicized as a way to kind of garner political votes. You know, once you start mentioning protecting kids, like everybody swarms in it. It's a really obvious tactic. And, you know, the reality is that most trans people just don't really care about your kids. They just want to get on the bus and not get beat up. And it's been really crazy to see, because I'm not trans, and however, I do feel that they are my community, and I'm honored to have so many trans friends. But it's interesting for me to see, you know, this change, this wind of change, because a lot of trans people I've known over the years didn't really, you know, it was very live and let live. There was some years, I think it was in the 90s or something, this trans girl, Nadia, she won Big Brother, and the whole nation, the whole of the UK was just like, yay. And that just wouldn't happen now because of the narrative that's been put out there in the press. Like, so many people are up in arms about false information, about lies, and it's really threatening a very vulnerable group of people. And I think as an LGBT community, we need to get behind that. We just need to get behind it. We need to unify and get behind that, because they are our community, and let's start with that. Yeah. And I think, you know, in terms of how do we address the rise in more conservative ideologies, I think as well it's important that the more old school gay community are embracing of new queerness. You know, there's sometimes a lot of resistance to that, and I think that's evolution. I think it's important to embrace new forms of LGBTQ plus identity and not resist it. You know, in life you're either a tourist or a spy. You know, because as a tourist you're kind of, you know, we're only here for a short time, and you're excited to explore things. You want to see things. You're curious. You want to try everything, and you're open. And as a spy, I think, you know, you're just kind of suspicious, and you've already made an assumption prior to investigation. You've kind of given up on learning, and I think that's a good practice for us all, is just to stay curious and open and supportive of new members of our community.
That's really well said. You mentioned that you're working on a porn movie.
Kind of.
Okay. Please tell me more about this.
Yeah, so the track, my new single, it's called Tonight I Wanna Love, and it's really about dance floors as community spaces, places to celebrate, places to find strength, places to nurse a broken heart, and you know, the places within clubs that we might find love or temporary relief from heartbreak. And it's not an uncommon theme in my music, actually, because I think if love is, if it's worth its weight, why can't it happen there as much as anywhere? And I really had the vision, because the music is quite poppy. I really wanted to contrast that with something different. And there's a porn collective called Heavy Load, and I'd been looking around for something, and then my trans friend mentioned that they were featured in one of their films, and I thought that sounds great, and I got in contact, and I've been working with Juan from Heavy Load curating some footage. So it's more like a porn visualizer, if you like. And initially my idea was to put that up on Blue Sky, because in this moment where Meta removed the treatment of LGBTQ hate speech, when they removed the protections around that, so that's no longer hate speech on anything Meta, which is crazy that we're still on there. There was a lot of talk about moving to Blue Sky, and I thought, well, I'm going to put this on Blue Sky, and maybe if people are curious to see it, they might join Blue Sky, the small, whatever amount of people watch it. So there'll be a more boring clip that will be on Meta-related platforms, but the real thing will be on Blue Sky.
Oh my God, and Heavy Load, what a great name.
Yeah. And I really wanted to platform that studio because it's so beautiful what they do. I mean, you will see it when you watch it, but it's really beautiful concept of, it has a sense of humor, which is often lacking, Yeah.
So when will this be out?
This will come out with a single, so it'll probably come out a few days or a week before July 25th.
Okay, so everybody stay tuned.
Yes.
What do you hope to see in your own career moving ahead? What is on the horizon for you right now, both for your music and for Queerly Beloved, maybe on a personal level?
I was thinking about this the other day, and I think I kind of take it back to that appreciation that I get to do what I want to do. I value that so much, and I want to do it. I want to continue doing it, and I think that's the basis. I'm very happy in my career. I'm very happy with the clubs I play in and the people I reach. It's always a great honor when people connect to what it is you do as a creative. So I would hope for more of that, let's say. And the podcast, for sure, I'm going to continue the podcast. I do feel first and foremost like a DJ, but that can change. Who knows? But I do also love talking about music, and at the moment I'm doing both of those things, and to be creatively satisfied, to be able to look after myself financially. These are all things that are really beautiful and I appreciate so much. And probably something simple like have more dogs. Yeah, that's a dream of mine. I took my dog and two of her friends to this forest yesterday, and it was just like my dream day. And the neighbors were like, "How are you going to manage 3 dogs?" And I was like, "This is great. Like, it's my dream. It's my dream day off is to like be running around a forest with dogs."
Should we meet Betty?
I mean, she's been making a lot of noise. It might. Shall I go and get her?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Hey, Betty.
This is Betty. She was also present at the Beats in Space interview, so she's well versed in interviews. Exactly.
Very well said, Betty. How many dogs would you dream of?
Oh, I mean, the dream is to have quite a lot of animals. I'm really animal obsessed, and I would have chickens and donkeys and birds, and I mean, I would love to be surrounded by animals. Animals give me a real sense of peace. Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope that happens for you.
Thank you.
It's been such an incredible pleasure meeting you and speaking with you.
Likewise, Chloe.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
So do you think